Good morning, everyone. So thank you for all being here today for our third year of running Digital Isle. And it's come a bit of a custom now, I guess, for me to come and talk to you about what we've achieved in the last year and what we're planning for next year. This year has been a mixed year of successes and challenges. So our numbers are probably a little different to what we've seen in the past. We've experienced a few more headwinds than we've seen, and I want to talk through some of those with you as well. We've also uncovered a wealth of opportunity as well. So I think that the future is looking bright. You have some QR codes on your tables. There's a QR code here for our Digital 2024 program. So this is in draft. This is available for everybody to review. We would like to receive all feedback from everybody and anybody by the 1st of December, and you can send that feedback to contactdigital@gov.im. It is a long document, but it's well worth a read because it really does set out not just the plan for next year, but also the key measures of success for next year as well, which I am going to summarize today. I'm going to talk through each one of these bit more detail, so I'm not going to go through it here. But I do want to focus on one of these metrics really early on, and that is our jobs. 240 new jobs to date. That is a little behind our target. We have a target of 300 jobs this year, which means in November we should be at 275 jobs. We're at 87% of that target. Now, I'm actually quite pleased about that because earlier in the year, last time we reported in June, we're at 56% of our target. So we have closed that gap, which is a real testament to the team that we have in place and how they've worked with all of you in the room and industry to drive that forward. But I think it's a good opportunity to talk about why we've seen some challenges, and they have been multifaceted. Firstly, we did have some really big opportunities in our pipeline that just moved forward at the pace we would have hoped. As with everything with business, plans change, situations can come up which cause a delay. And some of those jobs have moved into next year. So that's still good, but we didn't quite achieve the numbers that we hoped to this year. Secondly, we had a new funding system in government this year. And maybe foolishly, I made an assumption that we were going to receive funding for some of our program last year. That turned out to be a more challenging process, as it was a new process than we had anticipated. And as such, we've actually ended up delivering this year's program on about 2/3 of the anticipated budget. That is a lesson that we well and truly learned, so we won't be doing that again next year. But it does also mean that our plans for next year are a little more conservative because they're based on using a little bit less money with the funding requests reserved for the bigger ticket items. So I'm going to talk through a few more challenges as we go through, but I just wanted to really talk through that early doors so you kind of got a flavour of where we're coming from. So as we move into 2024, we are going to subtly change the way that we deliver our programs, both within the team and externally. So we have three kind of key sectors that we are driving our job growth as well as sustaining our existing jobs. So they're fintech, e-gaming, and video games and esports. Now, behind all of that, there is a plethora of other ICT jobs in telecoms and data centers, in CSPs. But in terms of our initiatives, those are the three that we're using to drive those numbers forward. So that's about protecting what we have and growing. Underneath that, we have our infrastructure program. Now, today, our infrastructure program has been focused on national telecom strategy, about delivering a national broadband plan so we all get fiber and really good connectivity. But I think as we get to the end of the national broadband plan and we think about what infrastructure means to the tech sector, it's really about making sure that we've got everything that the tech sector needs to grow. So it's around those foundational elements. So as we move into next year, we want to consider things such as ESG, such as skills, about building communities of practice into infrastructure. These are quite difficult work streams in that they don't always directly impact jobs, but I think we all recognise that having them there is critical for us to be able to do the other things that we're looking to do and to be able to drive jobs. So infrastructure is going to broaden out and take those in, and Smart Island is another one that's going to fit under there. So it's all around building healthy foundations for the future. We're going to have 2 new initiatives in 2024. The first one on data stewardship, which we'll talk through more about in the day. And the second one on artificial intelligence, which we're going to talk quite a bit about this morning. So that's around pursuing new opportunities and ultimately getting to more economic value. Underpinning all of this is a lot of the work that we have going on in the team. We have our strategic partners that are looking after business development and account management. So making sure we're bringing new business to the island and we're helping our existing businesses grow. And we have an excellent marketing team who are helping promote the messages and supporting all of those initiatives that we have above. And finally, we have our innovation challenge, which is more than just an innovation challenge. It accelerates all elements of this pyramid. So we're driving everything faster and it's really making us get more value out of our program. So that is how we're organising ourselves into 2024 to try to be as effective as possible. Okay, so we'll go through our work streams now. So e-gaming this year, we had a target of 200 jobs. Of these 200 to date, we've achieved 143 jobs, so 72%. This was an area where we had a major opportunity to delay. So we had 80 jobs we were expecting this year, which haven't transpired yet. So the fact that we're at 143 is actually really good. Those 80 jobs will be into next year now. So we have caught up on this. In terms of licenses, this has been an incredible year. We had a target to grow to 90 licenses this year. Well, actually, I think last time I spoke to you in this room last year, we had I set a target of 80, but we achieved it so quickly that we raised it to 90. We hit 90 licenses in June. So again, achieved that quite quickly. However, now we're down to 84 licenses. And, you know, licenses get handed in and get approved, and it's always a moving number. So we've actually had 22 new licenses this year. We've also had a number handed back as well, which is absolutely normal. So it has been a good year, regardless of the fact that we've dropped down to 84 now. We also wanted to deliver licenses into new markets, and we have delivered a license that faces Brazil and one that faces into India. So we've achieved that goal as well. So as we move forward into next year, we're not going to move the target. We're going to stay at 200 jobs, partly because we haven't quite nailed that this year. So we'll keep 200 jobs. We actually have 337 jobs in the pipeline for next year already. Now, just because we've got them in the pipeline doesn't mean they'll be achieved, but it does demonstrate a really healthy pipeline. And similarly with licenses, and this might terrify some people from the GSE in the room, but we have 95 licenses in the pipeline at the moment. Now, licenses are more wobbly than jobs, so I'm not suggesting we're going to get 95 licenses, but it demonstrates the interest in the market of the Isle of Man license is still very, very strong. So that's fantastic. But even though we're doing really well in this space, what we are lacking is a clear long-term strategy for the e-gaming sector, one that takes into account some of the headwinds that we know are coming our way, some of the opportunities that we recognize. We've not had a head of e-gaming all of this year, and we've tried to fill that role. We haven't managed to fill it, and what we agreed is that we would actually develop a strategy ahead of filling that post. So we're going to be spending a significant amount of time next year with the sector building a strategy that allows us to plan for the future as well as mitigate some of the risks that we see ahead of us. So moving on to fintech. Fintech has actually been even more challenging than e-gaming. We had a target of 80 jobs this year, of which we have delivered 43. Fintech globally has had a bit of a slowdown. A lot of the funding has shifted away from fintech as people start trying to invest into AI. As it's at that point in the hype cycle. And we've seen some challenges in the fintech industry, both on island and off island, that we haven't seen before, and we hadn't really expected to hit quite as hard just yet. That isn't to say that it's still not a key sector for us to grow. There was a real issue, I think, with the amount of events that we went to. Again, because we didn't get our full funding and we'd committed to e-gaming events so early, we only went to one fintech event all of last year. We also launched our innovation hub a little late, so we didn't have that as a marketing push to drive more people here. So we recognize there's a lot of work to do here. We had 4 FSA registrations this year and 1 new license. So I think not bad numbers, but not to the level we'd hoped for with our targets. So certainly some work to do next year. And again, I think this is very clear in our pipeline. So we're going to aim for 80 again, keep it static again, because we didn't hit the numbers. We only have 33 jobs in our pipeline at the moment. And that's because we've not gone out and done enough business development and enough marketing around this. So that is going to be a very clear priority next year. We have, I've combined our licenses to be DBAs and 4 licenses, of which we have 4 Class 8 licenses and 1 DBA in the pipeline. That's definitely going to change as people really understand what those licensing requirements look like. But now we have launched the Innovation Hub, and Kurt will be talking more about this afternoon. We have an opportunity to bring more businesses in a more consultative way to understand how they can achieve regulation. So we hope to bring 10 new businesses through that mechanism next year. So a lot of work to be done in fintech, but I still feel there's a lot of opportunity in that space on the island. Esports has been a really interesting work stream for us this year. We've run it for a couple of years. We've struggled to get some momentum. I genuinely feel now we're starting to see those green shoots coming through. We had a target of hitting 10 jobs this year, of which we've achieved 5. And while that's only 50%, we actually reworked the strategy at the beginning of the year, and we agreed that focusing on esports, which is 1% of the total video games market, might be making life quite difficult for ourselves. And what we've discovered is esports doesn't have a lot of money. They haven't got a lot of capital to move around and really consider where the best place to do business is. They're just trying to keep afloat. So what we focused on instead is video games, particularly any data construct that's supporting video gaming or any of the kind of back-end mechanisms. And using that technique, we've had 5 new jobs, but more promisingly, we've had 9 video game businesses engage with on-island businesses for legal advice, for structuring, and that's obviously driving the economy, and that's really important. And as I said earlier, we had achieved that new strategy, which we've refreshed. So moving to next year, we do need to grow this. I think it's quite a conservative target, maybe 20 new jobs, but we only have 9 jobs in the pipeline, so I wasn't comfortable pushing that too much further. We will track our proposition, so we'll drive for 200 pitches to new businesses off island. Liam, who's our esports manager, is fantastic at this. He's a real rock star when he goes to these conferences because of his history and legacy in esports and video games. So he'll be doing that, mainly focused in UK and some closer European countries to try to bring those here. He'll also be focusing on developing a Isle of Man video games and esports consortium. So now that we have a proposition, we need to work with businesses on the island to go to these events with us and help us bring these businesses to the island. We can't do it all by ourselves. We need to work with industry. It's there to help grow our existing industries. So we need to make sure that consortium is in place. Liam's going to be presenting on that this afternoon. Smart Island, this has been running for a few years. It has been a challenge, particularly this year. The good news is we said we were going to identify champions across government. Did that really early on. It was great to see the desire to collaborate and work on this across every single government department. We managed to get engagement very quickly through the chief officers groups, and we identified champions in every government department. We then wanted to create a data distribution platform and a visualization engine. And whilst we knew this wasn't going to be an easy task, it was more complex than we had imagined. So trying to deliver this kind of data and deal with the security and privacy challenges of doing so has created a bit of a roadblock. And then without the shared infrastructure, there has been a bit of a delay on delivering some of these projects. Retrospectively, that was probably an artificial delay. We could have perhaps moved forward on some of them, but we didn't. So we haven't delivered any of the 12 projects that we had promised this year either. Now, I do believe that a number of these will be across the line before the end of the year. But what we also recognise, another piece of learning, is the projects are so diverse that we don't have a nice kind of combined data set that's actually going to add value to improved decision making. So because of that, we decided that we're going to refocus this next year and focus on dealing with some problems we have within the department around economic indicators directly. So that we're working with our own span of control. We're going to be working with our sister agencies in Visit and Business, trying to solve some of their problems and see if we can make a case of how important this kind of live data can be to drive the right kind of decisions. So we won't have this as a separate work stream next year. It will be falling under infrastructure, but the value will be created through Visit Isle of Man and through Business Isle of Man. Data. So this is a good slide because we've achieved everything we set out to do, which is fantastic. We did have a report delivered to us at the beginning of the year by KPMG, which was very in-depth, gave us a lot of information around the data world, but didn't really manage to find what our USP could be for the Isle of Man. So we created a smaller working group, and we scratched our heads, went down lots of rabbit holes, and finally stumbled across a concept of data stewardship and the fact that we have a Foundation Act on the Isle of Man that would allow us to do this in a different mechanism than other places. And we have now we have a plan for that. We have funding for that through our revenue budget, and we've also linked it to the 2024 Innovation Challenge. So we have a way of delivering that next year. So it's now called Data Stewardship because that is what we're doing. We need to launch and promote this. We will be doing that partly through the Innovation Challenge, but not only through the Innovation Challenge. What we really want to achieve here is testing the concept of using a data foundation for this purpose. We've had some legal advice on this, and we have a report that says that this is the right vehicle to do, and to do data stewardship, and it will give us everything we need to be able to drive that forward. What we'd like to do now is get some real world businesses to work through that with us, test it out, and then at the end of the year, we'll review that act and make sure it truly is fit for purpose, and that it will do what we expect it to do. And then really understand how we're going to drive this forward. Digital Academy was the combination of factors really meant we didn't move this forward. We put it on hold very early. Predominantly, we didn't get any funding, so it wasn't funded. Secondly, a skills and workforce board has been created in partnership. So it's DFE, Treasury, Chamber of Commerce, and Desk are all working through that board with an independent chair. So rather than do something tactical, which this was always supposed to be, a tactical solution, rather than come up with a tactical solution, we were better served making sure that we're providing all the input that we learn from the industry into that skills and workforce group, board, so they could come up with an holistic plan that made more sense. So again, so this has been on hold. We did have some really good success working with other jurisdictions on this, and I think that's good to see. And we'll certainly be keen to carry on working with other jurisdictions on other initiatives because this was truly successful. And again, that's not lost. We'll feed that into the skills and workforce strategy as well. This year for infrastructure, so we had some key targets that we needed to deliver for the National Broadband Plan. So 90% of homes passed was a key metric for the non-commercially viable intervention zones, which are the areas that the National Broadband Plan focuses on. We have delivered that. We wanted to improve connections to 50%. We're actually at 45%. I now recognise this is much harder to do than I'd thought when we planned this last year. Every time you're getting more people connecting, you're getting more homes passed. So improving that percentage is very, very difficult. But there's about 500 new properties connected per month at the moment, which is a significant amount. The final 1% proposition. So we did present some options to the board around what we could do with this final 1%. The conclusion was we really needed to have a better understanding of where that final 1% was going to be before we determined what the best technologies were to satisfy that. It could be 5G, but if you don't have 5G in that area, then that's not going to work. It could be satellite. It could, there are a number of options out there. It's just making sure they're fit for the geographic locations we're looking at. So not achieved, but the work was done and it's ready for next year. So as I explained earlier, we are going to expand infrastructure out. We need to close or finish the National Broadband Plan, which means we need to hit 99% of the commercially non-viable areas by August 2024. So that's a key metric for us. But beyond that, we also need to deliver this community of practice concept we have, and we'll have a session on this later today. But we do recognise that we need to create clearer communities of practice with industry and with existing communities of practice and help them grow and establish them to next year. So we have an initiative to bootstrap that, to try to get as many of those going as possible, to generate more skills, more knowledge sharing, more understanding of different ways that you can grow your career. And then we need to develop a new, wider reaching infrastructure strategy for next year that includes some of these other components such as ESG, communities of practice, skills, so that we are truly creating the foundations, not just the technical foundations, but the true foundations of a digital ecosystem. And then AI. So I'm going to steal a little bit of Jason's thunder here, but hopefully not too much. AI is, as we all know, been a huge focus for many of us this year. I know certainly me and my team have spent a lot of time understanding this, learning it, talking to businesses about it, but making sure that we are using it in our everyday lives as well. We believe that we can create a compelling business case for 2030 to deliver a AI strategy. We think that AI strategy can deliver a 10% increase in GDP by 2030. So that's an additional 530 million exchequer benefit into the island. About 75% of that would come from productivity increases due to generative AI. And 25% of it would come from new products and services, new businesses created on the island. So again, I'm not going to steal too much of Jason's thunder, but those are the headline figures that we have in the program for next year.